Here we are, Wes, back again at Amon Carter Stadium, and today we have the privilege of being in the Founders Suite area, and wow, did they do a great job here. Wes, you're looking pretty sharp today.
Well, I read the memo. Apparently you didn't.
Apparently I didn't get the memo, and I tell you, you're looking awful dapper, my friend. But we are so excited to have you here with us today because we have a very special guest today that we have to interview. Wes, it's going to be pretty good stuff.
It's going to be pretty good stuff, and the time might give you a little hint about who we're going to talk to. So,
all right.
Now I'm going to take my checkbook and buy myself one of these suites in here. So.
Let's do that. Let's get over here and see. You think they'll see us dip into that food before somebody gets over here?
Nah.
Nah, let's go.
Okay.
All right. Okay, we're back here with KillerFrogs today. Got my partner again, business partner, Wes Phelan. And look who else we've got here today, Wes. We have got the creme de creme of TCU right now. Yeah, Mr. Chris Del Conte, our AD, our man in charge. And we're so thrilled to have him here today. And we want to find out more about Chris today and a lot of great things that have happened here for a while, and since he's been with us for 3 years, and just kind of have an up close and personal, if you can say that here, with Chris. And so we're thrilled, like I said again, to have him there. And we'll just get off right here at the top. I think we all know that a little bit about Chris's background, that him being part of the pineapple and tomato ketchup empire. Isn't that correct?
Right.
Right.
Del Monte.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got that. It's Del Conte. I'm sorry. You got that mixed up on me, Wes.
I'll thought that was
okay. Make a note. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, okay. If that's not the story, Chris, we really want to hear about where did Chris Del Conte come from? Where this guy that showed up on the planet here at TCU 3 years ago and walked in here from Rice University. We want to know about the history of your family, where you're from, what it was like to be Chris Del Conte growing up. We want to hear about this.
Well, unfortunately, I couldn't say that I was a part of the Del Monte fan. That'd be unbelievable. I can assure you that. But I was not that lucky. But I was very lucky in how I was growing up. Both of my parents were missionaries, and they started a children's home through the Catholic missionaries in Cuernavaca, Mexico, where I was born. And they started the missionary from there. They came to Taos, New Mexico, and had a children's home. And the basis of the children's home is you had kids were going to come there and have an opportunity to have a life that they otherwise didn't have. And you were based on age groups. So you had age groups of 0 to 6 in one house, 6 to 13 in another, 13 to 18. And I moved with the kids. We had 25 in each house. In fact, I have 2 of my brothers that I grew up with and sisters are going to be here this weekend and join me at the game. It's pretty awesome. But at that time, it was a very interesting, eclectic background. It was part of the 60s and 70s. Growing up in New Mexico or in Taos, I don't know if you've ever been there, it's you had communes all the way around, and here's my parents trying to run a children's home in the middle of nowhere. Right. It was a pretty fun environment as a young man. Wow.
And that is not the Del Monte story that
no.
that we were teasing with you about. That's certainly a story that I had no idea about. And so you grew up in this environment. Did this go all the way up to your high school time?
All the way through. And I think what was interesting about that at the time is that the lesson learned from my father is you can't choose your parents, but you can choose your character. And growing up, it was and you're sharing your stories as you have people that come from so many different backgrounds that were just things happened to them that they were left in a position where they were a ward of the state and 3 or 4 of their kids were together. And my father, at that time, they were taking kids and saying, let's adopt them out. They were breaking family units up, and my father said, no, we'll take them all together. We had kids from all over the United States, and I had grown up in it, so I didn't really understand anything else, any different than that. So it's not like, so as you're traveling with the kids and you're in the groups, the age groups and moving through, you really got a deep understanding of them and each other. And it was funny how sport came about 1979. You know, when you're going through school and you don't have all the greatest clothes, you don't have all the things that you'd want to have. My father said we had one kid try out for sport, and he came out and became instantly good at what he did. Became popular. Had a date. All of a sudden, self-worth came up. All 85 of us were in sports overnight. We were going to every single activity, which he had no basis of understanding of athletics. It's not his framework. It was just, he was a loving, just a generous man, and so was my mother, but they were not sport-based. One child became good in sports, just tried out. Next thing you know, he said he became good. People start calling, hey, is Larry there? Why, they're calling for Larry? Next thing you know, you're all doing sport. And then it came back to how we dressed. He said, you know, kids would come home and say, hey, we'd get teased for where we lived. It wasn't have the proper attire. My father came back and said, I will buy 5 pair of pants, 5 shirts, 5 t-shirts, shoes, socks, and shirts every year. And you get a new outfit at Christmas and a new outfit at Easter. That way you would never get teased about your appearance. So when you see me dressed all the time, it's because it's a tribute to my dad and the idea that I represent something more than myself. Here I represent Texas Christian University, which is a phenomenal institution. I represent 75,000 alums, student athletes. So I always want to look my best, but it came from the lesson learned from him.
Wow. Well, that explains your attire. I mean,
except today. The one day I don't wear a coat.
The one day you don't wear a coat tie. I think we kind of did that on purpose to you today. Wes thought he would do that, and we teased Wes about through the year. I mean, excuse me, not Wes, but Chris. We teased him about his tie collection and his coat collection and his boot collection, and we were like, you know, when his new home is built, he's going to need more closet space than the rest of yes. But now that we get a little background to that, that's an interesting thing, and you are well suited, and although we tease you, that's pretty cool. Well, let's take us on into high school athletics. You talked a little bit about athletics and a transition from high school to college, where you went to college. I mean, were you the nerd? Were you the athlete? What was going on there?
I wouldn't, you know, definitely wasn't a nerd. Maybe I was. but I think what ended up happening in sport is it interesting that sport is the ultimate equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, where you come from. If you can play, you can play. And sport really taught me that lesson early, that it became popular because of the activities on. You can be very smart, but sometimes you're still not socially accepted. Right. You wanted to be socially accepted. Sport and society, there's a page dedicated to that. You become socially accepted. You get a prom date. You get things that you could never imagine. And it was an awesome experience. That led for me to get an opportunity to get a scholarship to go to Oregon State. So I go to Oregon State University. I'm there 2 years. Bronco Mendenhall, who was a dear friend of mine, is the head football coach at BYU. We were all in the same class together. We've shared many moments together. My sophomore year, they dropped track and field at Oregon State based on the idea of Title IX. They said, look, you know what, we're not balanced. A lot of schools are dropping sports. Second biggest impact in my life is dropping a sport. I had no idea what Title IX was about. I had no idea about athletic finances. I was then transferred to UC Santa Barbara. Spent my career there and graduated. Upon graduation, my father now had transitioned from New Mexico. They was now working in Yugoslavia through the UN, through all the refugees. So we still had our place in New Mexico, but now we was working in Yugoslavia when the war broke out, and he was there taking care of all the refugee children that were there, and they asked him to come over and do that. So my parents were there doing that. I thought I was going to do the same thing. But a house parent that was working at the ranch was now the team doctor at Washington State. And he called me and said, what are you going to do in your life? I said, well, I'm probably just going to go work with my dad. My father told me, I don't care what you do in life as long as you serve others. That was his only requirement. I said, okay, I will, but I'll just come work with you. Dr. Donati said, well, why would you want to do that? Ironically, it was Jeremiah Donati's dad who works for me now. He called and said, what do you think? I said, I will go to Washington State. So I decided, I called my father, I said, Dad, I'm going to go to Washington State, go to grad school. I'm going to go in the industry of sport, because what it did for me socially. To me, winning and losses means a lot to the fan base, but what it does socially for a child coming into an institution, doesn't have the first generation, doesn't have all the faculties to do what he wants to do, yet through sports he can get an education serving others. Go to Washington State, and I decided that was my career path.
Wow. Hey, your dad was a wise man.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely instilled a lot of great values in your parents, you know it. And I think that played forth. And I guess as you kind of leaned on, there was some foreshadowing there going on. You talked about the athletics and getting you involved. Now you talked about him serving others. Those are kind of things that I think as we meander down this path that we find out that he definitely had some foresight for what his son, the path that he could possibly do in the future. So you get out of college, you start your career, you decide you're going to get into sports. What's going on? Or are you a single guy at this time? Or
Yes.
Okay.
I get to Washington State. I was definitely single. My wife, we would not have made it back then.
Okay.
I get to Washington State, and I get to Mr. Livingood, who's now the athletic director at UNLV. I had met once before, and he said, "Come on up. I'll put you to work." Well, my first job, I was the maintenance man. So I worked at Washington State. I started as a GA. I started working as a maintenance man, chalking the field, painting fences.
Wow.
Working on the football. As Kevin Sumlin was another GA that's head coach at A&M, and I was just you're just a catch-all. Wow. So I had wasn't on scholarship. Took out loans and said, okay, I'll do this as a leap of faith. And so I started working in the maintenance department. But I started seeing everyone in athletics and who had informal power, where to work, what to do. And the AD one day sat down and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, my goal is to impact people. And I know it doesn't matter what position you have, you serve wherever you're at. If you're the equipment room, if you're the custodial engineer, if you're the head football coach, your job is to serve people." So I knew that if I just started that path this way, I would end up where I was told to be. Saw development as a way that was a good tool because you could impact directly by asking someone for support, for scholarships, gifts, whatever it may be, to support institutional athletics. I focused on that area, got my first job at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. I mean, what I would say, my first legitimate job, making a whopping $18,000.
Woo!
And stayed there for 4 years, from 94 to 98. Went back to Washington State for 2 years, and then went to Arizona.
Wow.
The same person that was up, Mr. Livingood, that was originally hired me in Arizona. I Washington State, went to Arizona, hired me back, and then I was there for a number of times and got an opportunity to go to Rice. But I met my wife in San Luis Obispo. She was a math professor there. I met her. We dated. Ironically, I got a job offer to go to Washington State on a Friday. I asked her to marry me and left on Monday.
Wow. Wow.
She said yes.
And for you guys that have not met his wife, Robin, Chris is definitely, I think as we're hearing more about this story, he falls in the same category as Wes's eye in that department. He's a good and well-tuned overachiever in that department. Robin is a very nice lady, very attractive, and very intelligent. I'm sure it keeps you in line.
You know, think about it. We have so much in common that our educational background matches. She's an aeronautical engineer, master's degree in physics, and a degree in calculus for PhD.
Wow.
So she can balance it.
And I got a degree in sociology. So I'm going to tell you, we are just right on par intellectually in my household.
And she's presently a professor at Rice, is that correct?
Yes. She has an affiliation with Rice. She's a very published author. She's doing her specialty is, her goal in life is called GEM, Girls Excelling in Math. And so she's using art and math, using science and math, music and math to get young women involved in mathematics.
Excellent. And children?
And children, because she feels like anything else, if it starts young, then they have an appreciation for it, then it becomes natural to them. You know, it's like learning golf at 40. It's difficult. You learned it at 6, 7, 8 years old, and all of a sudden you have that swing that becomes natural to you. But if you start to learn something later in life, it's like learning a language later in life. Excellent. Rosetta Stone, I'm not too sure working for me, but it works for everyone else, right?
Very good. Very good.
Well, Chris, let's jump up to TCU now. You were announced as AD 3 years ago. I think I first met you at the BYU game up there in October of 2009. And so since you've come on board, we've won 2 Mountain West Conference championships in football, been to 2 BCS Bowls, we've been to the College World Series, the rifle team has won 2 national championships, and we've won a number of other championships, and in between all that, you built a new stadium. So what else have you got on your agenda or on your plate here in the next 3 years?
Isn't that funny when you start to think about what has happened here in the last period of time? And I was very fortunate at the time when I was at Rice, and Coach David Bed had done a wonderful job there, but we were 0-9. Coming off a 10-win season, we're 0-9, and we go 9-0, and I get here. All of a sudden, really? I mean, that's ridiculous. One game to do ultimate season turnaround. But what an amazing leadership we have. From our chancellor to our board of trustees, they had an incredible vision of what the institution will be. You think about the athletic directors from Frank to Eric to Danny, they built great foundation. When they hired me, and you're sitting in the interview room and you're looking at all these things that TCU has and the ambition they have, and they ask you 2 questions. We have a stadium plan that was been designed. It was a half a stadium at the time, remember? We would like to do this, this side of the stadium, and here's our thought process, but we have to have all the money raised by June if we're going to do this. Can you do it? Oh, sure, we can do it, no problem. I had no idea, but I knew in the back of my mind, if the chancellor and the board of trustees, they said they wanted it to happen, it was going to happen because it was from the top. And 2, can you get into a BCS conference? Those are the 2 questions. And in my mind, I'm thinking, sure, because we have, sure we could, knowing what we had, but just didn't know the avenue which it was going to go, just because you were just knowing how we were positioned. And it's a tribute to the great coaches that have been so successful. Again, the chancellor and the board that says, here's what we've got, what we want to have happen. So to fall in place, it was just putting the pieces together and saying, here's the plan we're going to do. And I don't think at the time we didn't envision an entire renovation of the stadium, because our goal was only $90 million to get the west side done.
Right.
And all of a sudden, fundraising got good, got steam. We went to Fiesta Bowl, Gary Patterson. You put Gary Patterson and the chancellor in a room together with the donor. That's a pretty unbelievable team.
Sure.
And we were able to get to, $164 million. Got a brand new stadium, and that odyssey was fantastic. Coupled with the idea, how you get into a BCS conference, and this is where I tell everyone, never underestimate a keg party. And I mean this sincerely. Jamie Dixon, I met at UC Santa Barbara. He's now the head basketball coach at Pitt.
Right.
He comes to the Baylor game, sitting in the box here 2 years ago, and he said, or 3 years ago, and he goes, hey, we started talking. I said, hey, we had the stadium going, but we have one little piece left. It's got to get into a BCS conference. What do you think about the Big East? I said, what do you mean? We sat in the back of the box the entire game concocting a plan. That Monday, we had Division I AD meetings in Dallas, and the plan was put in motion. On December 5th, we imploded the stadium, and we accepted membership into the Big East. So it was an amazing time. But fast forward to this time last year, Syracuse and Pitt announced that they are leaving September 17th.
Right.
The Big East was in turmoil. The Big 12 was not talking about TCU. They were talking about BYU, West Virginia, Louisville, everyone else but the Frogs. And I sat in my office and I said, what just happened? We designed the stadium for the Mount West. We're going to the Big East. The landscape was changing so fast that we had to put another plan in place in such short order to get us in a position where we went to the Big 12. And that was a completely unbelievable 3 weeks of just perseverance, getting people in place, having the right people talk to the right people, and having a phenomenal football coaching program that put us in a position we're in the Big 12.
Fantastic.
That is awesome, and of course part of these great renovations that were done here includes this very suite we're sitting in today, the Justin Suite, which is provided for the Chancellor, Mr. Dale Conte here, and it's a beautiful setting with the field in the background, the outdoor chairs. This is really nice and something to be proud of. All right, we're back here, and back in, like I said, we were talking about this beautiful suite, the Justin Suite that you have here, but it was reminiscent of what you were talking about earlier, Chris, the different athletic directors, and coming into today with Chris Del Conte. You know, in my day, of course, it was Frank Windecker, and Frank was the epitome of the TCU boy made good. You know, had been a letterman here, went through coaching the baseball team and evolved up to athletic director. And he served a lot of the time where that actually Wes and I have been here at the university and been part of it as either students or alumnus. And then to get into the, up around the Franchione area up there, that we end up getting Eric Hyman that comes on board. And Eric provided a different deal. I can't say that while Eric was not your atypical greatest personality guy, he got things done around here that had to get done. And we were real proud of the transitional process that he was able to do. And then when we got to one of the really nicest guys you'll ever meet, Danny Morrison, that came in, and Danny transcended that further, I think, where maybe Eric was not quite as personable with the TCU public, more administrative and getting things done. Danny kind of met that bridge on the other side and did things well. And then present day, it seems like we didn't know what we were getting, but now 3 years, it seems like it's been that short sometimes. Sometimes it seems like a lot longer, I'm sure, to you. But in 3 years, it seems like we've melted those things all together and able to get Christelle Conte, our athletic director. And I was discussing with you before the interview, there is been a love affair that has happened between TCU and Gary Patterson, and I think that was exhibited at the end of the Grambling game from Gary back to the fans. A very emotional moment for Gary, Coach Patterson, to be able to express himself back to the fans of thanks. It was wonderful seeing the student section come out like they did, to see the new stadium. We knew basically this wasn't going to be probably a premier contest, but to see the fans come out and support Gary on his milestone like that. And my point to this is, I think that's what's happening with Christelle Conte. I think people have gotten to know you so well that they're starting to gravitate towards, man, we got to keep this guy. We don't want to lose him. He's been good for the university, and Fort Worth's a special place. And so from that standpoint, we're not going to put you on the spot, ask you about any of your, we hope that your ambitions and aspirations still remain here in Fort Worth, and we hope you're here for a long time, but we do appreciate the job you've done. So furthermore, from this point, I would like to ask you, tell us a little bit about what happens in the day of a TCU athletic director. What goes on? What kind of scenarios happen? You get up in the morning, what time do you get up? What goes on?
I'll give you a tip. Well, let me just address something real quick you just mentioned. Frank Windiger is going to be just won the Corbett Award for Lifetime Achievement. We're going to honor him on this weekend's game at one of the quarter breaks. Tremendous man. Basically put the foundation here at TCU. Eric Hyman, what a great guy.
Right.
He put us in a position here where it was the right person at the right time to look at where we were going. So you think about every evolution that TCU has made. The one constant is we have the very best football coach in America, and we have a chancellor, Victor Boschini, that is unbelievable, and his leadership is fantastic. So those constants have been, even though Eric briefly worked with Victor, but he was there with Ferrari. But the things started to change. You can't undervalue Malcolm Loudon and his contributions to what has happened. Our board of trustees, from Luther King to Clarence Scarborough to John Roach. So many people have had their hand in what has happened. I think as you go back from a standpoint of from my position today on a daily basis, it is an honor and a privilege to be here. And I really mean that, as I serve the community. Anyone that writes me an email or phone call, I call them back immediately, or I try to call within the day and say, okay, here we go. A lot of people are upset with the seeding process, and I remind everybody, this process things have happened at TCU in the last 3 years you could have never predicted anywhere in the world. People call and say, how can you do, you've been in 3 different conferences, you built a brand new stadium, you resat a stadium, and people say, but the decisions we made were based on, we're in the Mountain West, here's what we're building, here's how we're going to seed it. We went from 12,000 season ticket holders to 32,000. it's amazing in this period of time. We've had to, when you raise, you had 6 people give you $15 million, and we're one of those suites, but you can't forget that we also had other people give us 1, 2, and 5 million to equal 165. Right. Then you have a club and all these things that you have to do, and TCU is such an unbelievable place, and people care for each other, yet it's their passion, my business. I have to run it as a business. It's an enterprise. To give you an example, Texas has a budget of 165 million. Oklahoma's at 90. Oklahoma State's at 63. Kansas at 72. We have to get there. But as you're running your passion and what you believe and love, I have to run it as a business to make sure that we have the dollars necessary to compete against those people. So sometimes my decisions are not going to be the most popular, but I'm not doing ever to get anybody mad. It's okay, here's what we're trying to do, because right now we have to, if we're going to ask our coach to compete where we want to compete, we have to give him the resources. We can go, and you need to revisit history to know where we're going. It wasn't too long ago, we weren't given the resources. We were left out of the Southwest Conference.
Right.
We were not competing at the level we wanted to compete at. And that's the best thing that's ever happened to us.
Best thing, I agree.
Because it forced us to look inside and not blame and say, we as an institution will never allow that to happen again. And we sat on an odyssey, a 16-year odyssey, to get to the point where we're at today. And my job is to make sure we never go back.
It's almost a Disney movie that happened.
It is, but my job is to never let us to go back, to always look forward.
Right.
And there's an old adage, aim low, they're riding Shetland ponies.
Right.
Aim high, they're riding rockets, and that's what TCU is.
Right.
We're aiming high. So a day-to-day basis, I get up at 5 o'clock, I go work out at 5:30. From 5:30 to about 7 o'clock, I work out, come back and go and either take my babies to school, come back, get in the office, and a typical day today was I go from a check, first from check what's going on within the department, check the pulse, if there's anything happening. So that was from 8 to 9. 9 I met you all. I have a student out that's coming in to see me. Her mom is dying of cancer. She's down in Houston, so I'm going to see the child, spend some time with her, see what I can do to help them, see what assistance we can do, and then spend a little bit of quality time with her. It's Parents Weekend, so I have thousands of parents coming in with their student athletes, so I have scheduled appointments all day with parents to talk about their sport and their kids and what we can do to serve them. I'm meeting with 2 different recruits. I meet with every recruit that comes to TCU. Wow. So I can sit down and talk about the advantage of getting one of the best educations in America, 13-to-1 classroom ratio, and just talk about where we're going. And then meet with 2 donors this afternoon asking for money for Daniel Meyer. And then we'll have dinners with donors tonight and game time tomorrow. So it's I'm booked solid.
Great.
Right.
Well,
and then in the meantime, I answer all the emails and phone calls and say typical things. And people are upset with the seating process. I hear about +4 24/7. I think that's just going to be, I just name my name, change it from Del Conte to +4. I'm like, but it's funny. But that process came from, it was innocent in nature, but it's caused crazy problems. Yeah. But it's the best. We're at 32,000 seats. We're going to get better, and we're heading in the right direction.
Well, that's great insight.
Well, now recently, the Big 12 has announced that $2.6 billion television deal.
That's a good number.
Big bucks. Big bucks, yeah.
Right.
And so, TCU recently announced an affiliation with Fox Sports, is that correct? So can you elaborate a little bit on that, what it means to us?
Well, let's go back to the television contract. I think when you start to look at what we were receiving from the Mountain West Conference, was roughly around $1 to $2.5 million a year as a conference. Just think about the money. You can do the math. 13-year grant of rights. Every school in the Big 12 signed the grant of rights and said we were going to be together. These 10 teams, where college athletics needs to be regional, where you have great affiliation, great water cooler conversations on Monday. You guys are now the water coolers. KillerFrogs have become the water cooler conversation. Everyone's just on everyone's rear end constantly. It's lovely. I love that, because that's what the passion of sport is all about. So the television rights gives us a platform to talk about TCU coast to coast. When you think about our ascension upward, we also went from 4,000 applicants to 20,000 for the same 1,600 spots. We're so hot right now, it's smoking hot. And that's fantastic for this institution. The chancellor is revitalizing the entire institution. When you look at the new residence halls, he's built a new intellectual building on campus, energy industry, the new library. Things are just moving. And that when you're moving, people want to be a part of it. And that Big 12 television contract gives us security that we're in the best conference in the country, one of the best conferences in the country, right now where we wanted to be. But that's a platform that's really centered on football and men's basketball. We looked at a third tier when the Longhorn Network did their third tier, paid third tier network, which you get to put one football game on and some basketball games on. I looked at it and said we were accustomed, as a fan base, accustomed to being on the mountain for all of our other venues. So it was not necessarily looking for revenue. I was looking for exposure in a 5-state area: Texas, LSU, Arkansas, Oklahoma. We're a big process, and New Mexico. We're a big process of where we can get our product out. But mainly it was for recruiting. In baseball, we had 13, 14 games on them. So now we've said we're going to have 50 games on the third tier network, and we're going to be a variety of games that we're going to put on Fox to sell our product, so that recruit in Houston, that recruit in Louisiana, that recruit in Norman. Well, you know what? TCU's in the Big 12. I want to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
So it's just a fantastic win for us.
Good deal.
It's awesome.
Will that be branded as a TCU
TCU
network?
on Fox.
TCU on Fox.
Isn't that awesome?
Excellent.
It's gonna be great. I'm excited about that. We just worked out the particulars yesterday. So yeah, that's what I did yesterday. I worked on a TV contract for about an hour and a half yesterday. And got it all lawyerese.
Well, speaking of contracts,
Yes.
let's talk about some future scheduling here. And
Yes.
let's talk about the latest news and how it's going to affect. The first thing to talk about, of course, is the news that came out last week about TCU and LSU at Cowboy Stadium,
that
at
official?
Jerry's World, at the Death Star. I believe it's official. And then also some of the, how does this affect people like the Arkansas scheduling in the future, and what is going to be our change of scheduling concept now that we're in the Big 12, and realistically, we're probably not looking to add a couple of heavy hitters in the top 10 at the very start of the year normally. How does all this equate? Why did we end up in this LSU situation? What is the future of a series like Arkansas?
I mean, I think my preference, and I would always would like to have home and home venues. When you talk to scheduling, and my job is to serve up. If you look at a pyramid in my office, I'm at the bottom, and my staff, then coaches, then student athletes, and then our donors, and we serve up. We serve up. I sat down and said, so coaches are all very involved in scheduling in all sports. I said, what are we looking at? Gary always wants to have a stretch game, a game we should win. It's a one, and then a 1AA. You're looking at when we're a 9-game schedule in the Big 12. The LSU conversation really came up with, you have a home and home venue. We go to LSU first. You got to get them back to Eamon Carter.
Got to get them back.
And I don't think there was a problem in getting him back. I think that's a rumor. I think the end of the conversation is that LSU game in Cowboy Stadium with Oregon a couple years ago, or the Alabama game against Michigan. The economics are so great that you have, when we're approached on both sides in an economic gain. You saw what was shared. $9.4 million was split between Alabama and Michigan. Not saying that number's here for Killer Frog Nation, but I am saying it is a financial windfall for us, but more importantly, the publicity that we get from being college football kickoff on ESPN coast to coast, the brand of who TCU is. My job is to protect the brand, promote the brand coast to coast. And you look at that and said, okay, that's a game that, boy, oh boy, what about a national stage for us? Right. So that was all, and that was in communication, constant communication with our head football coach and what we wanted to do. And we came up and talking to ESPN and talking to LSU. That was a decision that was a no-brainer.
Right.
And we decided to go through that. But my preference, and always my preference, will be home and home. If you go back and we're going to have an exciting announcement. I'm not going to make it today, of a Big Ten team coming to TCU on a home and home. They start here first.
Awesome.
We have our Arkansas game. We'll start at TCU first. So we are heading, and the decisions that we are making are made preference that we would play here and we would go on the road. But we're always going to try to always have an unbelievable game at home. It just doesn't happen every year. I think last year, I thought we did the greatest job ever in a schedule that I got the most garbage from. We lose Tech, remember?
Right.
BYU and Utah leave, and all of a sudden now we're scrambling for games. I was getting on a plane, getting ready to go to China, when all of a sudden I get the phone call, Tech's not here, we lost, we're like scrambling for games. Well, we knew that Louisiana Monroe had a coach really like Gary. We called him, I'll play it. Called Portland State, who's the friend of mine went to school with me in Santa Barbara. He goes, I'll play. And I called Bronco, who's a dear friend, and said, okay, I'm not playing to your place, but I'll play at a neutral site. Got a phone, called Cowboys, yes. Next thing you know, we do a schedule within an hour and a half. I'm on a plane leaving, and everyone's going, you're such a bum. That's the worst schedule ever. And I'm like, whoa, if you knew what was happening. What was happening? It was so late in the game to get scheduling.
But see, they don't, and they don't understand. It could have been a lot worse. It was relationships that actually pulled that in. So.
Absolutely, and that's all relationships. But it's an interesting thing that now football scheduling. We're playing Eric Hyman's schedule right now. This is how far, right now.
Sure.
The next 3 years will be Danny's. The schedule I'm playing with is 19, 20, 21, 22. Right. That's how far out these things are. But the conference shifts have caused massive problems. You saw Oklahoma have to go play UTEP this year. They had right. I think you look at Oklahoma State's schedule, they're all trying to find these games. When the conference shift happened, it caused a lot of things.
Sure.
So we're headed, but we're all right.
Well, in speaking about that, let's talk about the Thanksgiving game with Texas. What's the chances of that becoming a yearly, does Texas have all this control as far as the scheduling on that? How does that all work out? What can you share with us?
I will say, and I think there's so much speculation on the water cooler conversations. We have only spoken this year's schedule. We took A&M's spot. We knew we were going to be the Thanksgiving game this year. It was the worst kept secret in America because I could never talk about it, but everyone else was receiving tickets that had the date on it, but we were told not to say anything because
right.
we were in negotiation with our TV contract.
Right.
But we know, so we meet as an athletic directors. We have all 120 Division I ADs will be in Dallas Monday and Tuesday. We have meetings, and then we'll have Big 12 meetings the following that day. We'll start to discuss next year's scheduling. We have not even spoken about that. I know Texas has come out and said, DeLoss and Locke talked about them being the permanent game. They would like to have a game there every year on Thanksgiving. But that was their preference. We have not discussed it. My hope is to have Texas come here next year on Thanksgiving. I've spoken to DeLoss and said I think we could deliver an unbelievable environment. The fans, the student section, right. The faithful, the Purple Nation is unbelievable. And we would have a great experience. However, we have yet to have that discussion. We will start that process.
Will this be a conference approved situation?
Yeah, they do all the schedule. I mean, everyone's going to sit there and say, okay, here's where we go. But remember, when you start to think about Arkansas playing A&M in Cowboy Stadium every year, right? You're looking now where you can get the greatest exposure for your conference. You see, so you have to not only look at your own self, but you're looking for not only what's good for TCU, but what's good for the Big 12. When you start to have these discussions, it's what's going to get us the greatest exposure for the conference and our member playing schools. So when they're making decisions, they're talking about LSU playing A&M now on Thanksgiving. That's been a rumor that's been out there.
Right.
Well, you don't know all these things are happening, but the commissioner's going to go back and say, you know what, this is what we're going to do for the good of the conference, and we as member institutions will follow suit. Right. So these conversations are just, we have Bob Bowlesby is a tremendous guy and a great commissioner. And he was, at Iowa for years, at Stanford. He understands and was in leadership position. Who's head of the NCAA basketball committee. Great resume, great critical thinker. He will put us in a position where he'll say, okay, these two matchups need to be here. You just saw West Virginia play a football game in RFK. It's not RFK Stadium anymore, isn't it? But it's the new field in FedEx Field.
That's it.
That's a great exposure.
Right.
So you're going to see a little bit of these of one-off games, solely based on the fact that the economics are so big, but more importantly, national exposure for that conference and that institution is huge.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about expansion a little bit. Now, not so much in conference, but of our sports here at TCU. We're getting ready. I know you're raising money for Daniel Meyer. Baseball's going to have a little bit of expansion in their facilities. Any other expansions or teams or facilities or programs?
I think you look at it is right now I'm putting together a strategic plan from a Title IX perspective, because your student body we have to match our student body enrollment. So we know we're looking at what sports have been getting a directive from the Board of Trustees and the Chancellor to start to look at what sports we will add in the future. Number one. Number two, economically, we know we have to have men's basketball has to generate significant revenue for us. We just got back from Kansas. What a wonderful facility that is. You go, everyone in the Big 12 has had tremendous basketball facilities. Daniel Meyer, nothing has been done in Daniel Meyer since it was built in 1968. St. Lockrams, we only have one restroom on the main concourse. You have to take elevators, escalators, not escalators. Stairs down.
Let's not
Don't go escalators. I
That's
understand the
another-
concept. Jeez.
There we go.
Right, I understand. You have to take the stairs down. You have enough, but it's very antiquated. That, if you're bringing in recruits, when I talk to the basketball recruit today, he's going to ask me, what is your commitment to basketball? If you look there, we don't have a commitment to basketball. We need to do that. We're in the process of the architects. We're value engineering it. We think it's going to be roughly around a $40 million project. Do I think we can raise money? Absolutely, I do. Well, I know we will. And we'll put our position where then men's basketball, women's basketball has a venue that we can attract the very best athletes to come here. Because we're the very best school in the Big 12, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So if you have the greatest institution, and then part of the problem is, I always say this, you can't use 1950 Bunsen burners to teach modern day chemistry.
Right.
So that you're not going to get the greatest chemists if you don't have a great science department. It's the same issue here.
Baseball.
And baseball, obviously Schlossnagel's a tremendous coach, just been named USA baseball coach for next year. I think we have tremendous coaches here, and that just goes to tribute to Danny, Frank, and Eric for who they brought in, but it's a main tribute to the TCU culture. They come here, they understand that they're going to be supported, they're going to be well loved. You go to a soccer game on Friday, there's 2,400 people out there. It is unbelievable. But baseball, what we're doing with baseball is we want to ensure that we continue to invest in that product. When you go to Omaha and you start to look around at A&M putting in $30 million, Texas just built a $30 million baseball facility. We have a great facility, but we need to do improvements to that facility if we're still going to be able to attract the very best kids. So we have about an $8 million project going on right now. We're hoping to, we have close to $2 million raised. I'm excited about that project, and we are hot and heavy in raising money for that.
When will that be completed by?
When we get all the money.
When we get all the money,
okay. So it's just about fundraising. I think, and that's, we have such a small fan base. So you always have to go out and find new prospects, find new people, because you just can't keep on going to the old well again. And we've raised the sites. It was interesting when someone asked me about football. In our ascension in the last 10 years, we raised ticket prices $10 as we were moving. So it's my job to say, okay, that's great, but we got to change the economic shift. We have a $200 ticket at Oklahoma State. The ticket is $500 on top before your donation. We were at Kansas this week, and we took a tour of the facility, had some donors with us, and we're walking around, and they said, well, the minimum donation to get a basketball ticket here at Kansas is $100. It's not bad, but the ticket costs you $1,000. The cheapest ticket for basketball at Kansas is $1,000. I understand their product. There's 16,000 seats that are sold out. The economic engine from that is providing opportunities for all sports.
Right.
Not saying we're going to charge $1,000, guys. I'm just saying we collectively have to start looking how we're going to mix our passion for TCU with the business model to ensure that we're successful across the board.
Right. Our last question today is going to be directed at what we do, what Wes started back in 1997 with a group of owners, and that I've been a part of for quite so many years now. But the place that we love and we spend lots of time and you refer to as Killer Frog Nation and what it is, and the thing that's great about you, Chris, is that and Killer Frogs is that you have always been very kind to us and very acknowledging of what this Killer Frogs Nation does provide to TCU, and what kind of great energy. Sometimes it's not always the right energy we kid, but no, for the most part, we have a great fan base on there that, and it is the new landscape of what goes on in college football. I often tell Wes, and I've told you, There is not another place on the planet where more TCU people get together on a daily basis than KillerFrogs.com. How does this affect an athletic department? It's something that's never going to go in reverse now. It's something that's going to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
We see newspapers dying around the country. We see layoffs, cutbacks, places like the Star-Telegram, publications. And now we have this internet generation that goes to these sports fan sites or recruiting sites, what have you. How does that affect in the thinking and the transition of what we can provide for TCU, how it gets the word out? And like I said, we appreciate so much today you sharing this with us.
Well, I can't thank you enough for Wes for building this site and Scotty for what you guys have done to take it to a new level. It has become the new form of communication. I refer to it as a job evaluation website because on a daily basis you are getting evaluated on your product by the people that you serve. So it's critical to me. When I hear things going bad, wrong, or negative, I have to say, okay, what has happened? So we know we have to be completely transparent. Because of the platform you have, we did 4 town hall meetings to educate people on what we were trying to build, to talk about, okay, you're gonna have questions, because sometimes they're gonna put it on the website or on the blog, and it's gonna be someone's opinion, not necessarily what we're trying to say or a fact. It's an opinion that becomes fact.
Right.
So you end up having, so we have to be transparent in everything we do and have open, honest dialogue. So because of your platform, we knew, I said, okay, we are gonna have 4 town hall meetings to talk about the ticket process, the stadium, the seating. We went through Bellina, which is an online seating system, so they can watch the tickets disappear before their eyes to know when they were gonna choose.
Right.
But at the same time, this forum has given me a pulse of what the nation says. Now, it's also at times when you look at the pulse and things start getting negative, it's also known that we have a responsibility to act and react.
That's correct.
So I love it. But sometimes you can get to a point where you're going, okay, what is on there that is not fact? And what's happened is people's opinions will run rampant. And when you have an opinion not based on all the facts, you just go, okay, let's not overreact to that. It'll, somewhere along the way, the truth or what was actually trying to be said will come out. But it does not, what happens today is back in the day, you would have a problem, it would usually fester for 2 weeks before it got out. Or you have a positive situation and it comes, so either way, it's instantaneous communication. You provide a platform for all Horned Frog Nation to get on, see what's going on and form an opinion. At the same time, I use your platform to say, okay, here's the people I serve, and they're salty at me today at this particular issue. I'll say, okay, how are we going to address that? Right. What do we need to do? And I don't overreact to it, but at least I understand, here we go. And that's just a generation. I'm at the tail, I'm right in the tail end of this revolution, right? Because it's the young people know, but all the older people get on there and they may not post, but they sure read it. Right, and I get phone calls today, I'm in Midland, and let me know. Okay, sure enough, you got on the job evaluation website, and you're going to let me have it. That's good, but it's great. And I think that from when you do the seating, all the things that all the change is hard for people. People say, oh, that's going to be great. Just don't move my seats.
Right.
You know, all 12,000, all 32,000 of our season ticket holders had seats at the 50-yard line for 50 years, because they will tell you that they did, and I honestly believe they did, because we would allow people to just walk in and sit anywhere. Right. It's not like we stopped anybody. You can buy a $5 ticket, sit at the 50-yard line.
You're just happy they were
there. They're happy they were there. So the evolution of what we're trying to do, we can't lose what makes TCU special, but yet we still have to try to run a professional operation.
Right.
So it's just been, but your platform has given me a lot of information and given us a lot, and it's very useful.
And how does the athletic department, just this week we had a situation that came about, Wayman James' unfortunate injury, and I believe that KillerFrogs probably broke it. It wasn't Wes or I. We had some sources that from different areas that broke that. I know that's probably not something that is necessarily that Gary, Coach Patterson would prefer to happen, but it is what it is, and I think it's a further lesson for all of us that with this instantaneous technology, that it's not the old days of Woody Hayes where we can, hold back everything. There are regulations as far as injuries being reported, things like that. But of course, there's ways around that curve, obviously, as it happened in this situation. How does the athletic department respond to those type of things happening?
Well, I think today we're in an age where information, it's always been that way, information is power. But it comes from a variety of sources now. It can come from anywhere that says, I heard this and they post it.
Right.
You can think about a year ago when Orange Bloods was posting who was going to what conference and how it was going to cost. And
Right.
ESPN actually cited Orange Bloods on air for breaking a story. That gave absolute legitimacy to a site that before had been more, not necessarily marginalized, but more on the periphery of just fan base, but their information started coming was actual fact, right? So now all of a sudden, you just have to readjust how information is getting out, because anyone will, have a casual conversation with you, next thing it's posted.
Right.
Or someone will have a conversation with someone who has someone that gets posted and it's based on fact, but never really wanted to have it out there. It was just a personal conversation. Injuries and things that happen within our athletic program, sometimes, or whatever it may be, the issues may not want it to be public, because
Right.
they're still trying to decipher how, when, where, and why,
Right.
and how they're going to adjust to it. It is just an evolution.
Evolution.
And coaches are different.
Right.
They by nature, circle the wagons.
Right.
They're going to battle. They're trying to figure out how they're going to win a game. They're coming in here at the same time.
Strategy involved.
Then you have everyone around trying to break that penetration,
Right.
to figure out how they're going to get information to post on your site.
Right.
It is the fact.
Right.
So it is.
And what you're saying, there's a lot of rumor. We have to, and that's the challenge that Wes and I deal with daily.
Sure.
If something like that comes in, is this rumor? Is this not? If we believed everything that had posted on KillerFrogs and other website, this would probably be Gary's 5th or 6th year at K-State University.
You're absolutely doing that,
that's
right?
an absolute. That's exactly right. And so, that's just part of the deal. Well, Chris, we want to let you know that KillerFrogs and KillerFrogs Nation, we're here for TCU. We're here in support of TCU, and we're proud of what we have. We are not being independent of TCU. That allows us some functionality, but it also, we love our great relationship we have with you guys. The whole reason we're here is for you guys and for TCU and for our fans to be able to enjoy themselves, be entertained, while also talking about the great university that we have here in Fort Worth. And Wes and I both want to thank you so much today for meeting with us, taking a lot of your time out of a busy schedule, as we already know, to share some very personal things with us, share some exciting things that are happening, letting us in, and just want to give you a big thanks.
Thank you. You guys have a great platform, and it's fun. It's interesting on your platform too how many people from recruits. I always tell them, where they get their. We have nothing to hide. Remember in high school you used to put a clear cell.
Yep.
Went on a date, got a cup. I tell everyone we have nothing to hide. We are who we are, and the institution is so passionate. And I tell you, there's two emotions that you can deal with: love and hate. You cannot deal with apathy. And that is exactly what happens on any message board. Something gets coming one way or another, and our message on your platform is fabulous because you have so many different opinions that we have nothing ever to hide.
Right.
You just got to embrace it.
Lots of transparency.
So much transparency, but sometimes you just don't want it all out there at one time, and it gets out there. But now you just know, okay, here it is. Here's how we're gonna deal with it and move on. You just got to have a thicker skin than normal because it gets personal sometimes, and when it gets personal, it's hurtful. I know people that will say, "Guy, I wish they wouldn't say that," but because in the younger generation, it has a shelf life of 2 minutes. But when you're our age, you're trying to figure out how, what the water cooler conversation never really got to you. Someone may be bad, but they never really. Now it's just right front and center. And I know some of our coaches, and I have dealt with, boy, oh boy, if the nation's really feeling this way, how are we going to react, or what do you do? That's really not what happened. But at the end of the day, I was educated. We have nothing to hide. We are standing tall in who we are, and we all represent Texas Christian U, and so do you. It's awesome.
Thank you very much, partner. We appreciate you. Let's give out our ending deal here. We always do. Let's give a big Go Frogs to them. Go Frogs!